eRoad provides fleets with advanced capabilities for remote reefer control, real-time compartment mismatch detection, product-specific temperature alerts, and a host of compliance management applications. It's time to revisit how your refrigerated goods are monitored. Welcome to Running on Ice, the coolest community in freight. I'm your host, Mary O'Connell, bringing you the latest tech updates, warehouse news, and everything happening in the cold chain world. Not only is there the coolest show in freight, but there's Running on Ice, a newsletter that could not be colder. You can subscribe to that on freightwaves.com/running on ice. Before we get into our guest interview, let's get into some headlines. Trade and economy officials from the Group of Seven, also known as G7, wealthy democracies, strengthened their pledge last week to work together to ensure smooth supply chains for essentials like energy and food, despite global uncertainties. The nations promised to maintain a free and fair trading system based off the rule of law and enhancing economic resilience and economic security. Worries are growing among developed nations about maintaining a stable supply of computer chips as well as essential minerals like lithium, which are critical these days amid the demand for electric vehicles and green energy. Sprouts Farmers Market is debuting more than 30 exclusive holiday products under its Sprouts brand line. The announcement comes as the grocer continues to ramp up their private label offerings and ready their shelves for the upcoming holiday season. Sprouts has been expanding its private label items across store categories in recent years. The company's store brand sales grew 12% during the financial quarter that ended July 2nd, reaching 20% of total sales. As consumers continue to grapple with inflation ahead of the holiday season, grocers are working to lessen the load with discounted items. Hapag-Lloyd, a leading global shipping company, marks a significant movement in creating the world's largest smart container fleet by installing its 700,000th tracking device. This digitalization of the fleets will help track containers, transmit data on a timely basis, and monitor any sudden container activities, making the supply chain more accessible and transparent. The tracking device, designed with the latest energy harvesting technology, will ensure a longer lifetime and high-frequency data transmission. The company plans to install tracking devices on its fleet of 1.6 million dry and reefer containers by the beginning of 2024. Today, we are joined by Pratik Jagad, Chief Product Officer at NewViz. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Mary.
I am pretty excited about today. You guys aren't really, NewViz isn't a stranger to Running on Ice, but I'm excited that you're on here today, kind of breaking down some of the behind the scenes things that really kind of help keep your supply chain running. But before we get too far into that, let's get some background on you and kind of how you got started at NewViz.
Yeah, so I've been leading the product team here at NewViz for the last 8 years. NewViz, as some of you may not be aware on the show, is a last mile delivery management and orchestration SaaS platform. We focus on industry verticals of pharma, food, 3PLs, and I come with about 20 years of experience in logistics and transportation. Started my career with Manhattan Associates, implementing WMS and TMS systems, and our founders, Guru and Ananta, they also worked with me at Manhattan Associates. That's how we connected. And then, I went to a few other supply chain companies before, I decided to come on board and help them with this new and revolutionary platform that we were creating. And it's been a great journey so far.
I mean, you guys have really kind of set up a new kind of standard, if you will, for that kind of final mile piece. And some of the trickiest areas that you can do final mile, like, pharma, food, and everything like that, like those are the things that, it does matter if a box gets jostled or if something doesn't stay within its proper temperature. No one really cares if a pair of jeans shows up, after being 110 degrees. It's still a pair of jeans. It'll be fine. But kind of getting into the meat of everything today, how do vehicle and routing systems make a difference in the world of cold storage and food delivery during that final mile process? What are some of those practical advantages that a business could implement within the industry?
Yeah, so, in case of food delivery, right, it's especially important, especially when it's temperature sensitive, that the deliveries are done on time, right? Time is critical. Delayed deliveries can lead to spoilage in transit. It can also lead to unavailability of labor at the customer location, right, to handle the stuff. if your delivery arrives late, right? Another aspect of food delivery is lost sales. If I'm not able to deliver on time, if the customers are relying on timely, fresh deliveries, then you lose sales, right? So time becomes a critical aspect over there. Another aspect that comes into play is the labor costs, right? So when food deliveries are delayed, now what happens is the labor that was planned in anticipation of those deliveries is not utilized, and then you have to pull some overtime labor whenever it arrives to handle it, right? Because if you don't handle it, it will spoil. So for VRS solutions, it is it can help with optimizing your delivery plans to meet those promised time windows, not just arriving late, but also making sure it doesn't arrive too early. So the time critical component is where VRS solutions can really help in food deliveries, temperature sensitive deliveries. In terms of practical advantages for businesses, right, there are two main areas of advantage, that VRS solutions can provide. One is on the daily planning and execution side. Here VRS solutions can be used to effectively plan your routes to minimize delivery while maximizing on time deliveries. And if you combine that with app-based execution or tracking these systems that can monitor the real-time progress of vehicles, then you can take corrective actions. As the execution is going through. Let's say, for example, there was a roadblock or something. VRS solutions can dynamically figure out, okay, can I do the second delivery first, right, and then come back and do the first delivery, still maintaining the time windows, right? So it has impact at that everyday execution planning level. The second aspect where VRSs can give advantage to food distribution is in long-term planning. Often a lot of food distributors deliver to the same locations on a schedule, right? The volumes may vary, right? Sometimes you are delivering 200 pounds to a store. Sometimes you're delivering only 50 pounds. The volumes may vary week after week, but the routes are pretty much the same. Now, what happens over time is as the businesses shift, these routes don't make sense anymore, right? The promised delivery windows that you had given to them 1 year back don't make sense anymore because the volumes have gone up a lot or the volumes have come down a lot. So what VRS solutions have is this notion of territory planning, or sometimes it is also called a strategic planning, where you can analyze your historical data and figure out, what routes and what promised time windows make the most sense for my business. And also, as your salespeople try to sell to more locations, how to onboard these locations and how to promise them the right time windows so that you can maximize your customer satisfaction at the same time, also keep your costs under control.
So if I'm a shipper and I'm sitting there, looking and I have, kind of my route optimization and, I have a system that works, but I start noticing that there are some issues. How do I know that it's time to maybe redo that route optimization and go back and say, okay, we've added a couple other facilities in our network. We've done all this. How do I know if it's time to go back and kind of rebuild everything more or less? Because certain facilities have demand at certain times of the year, and then others, it slows down. But kind of what are those hallmark signs of maybe I need to start, looking back at what I've created and make some major adjustments?
Yeah. So this is where, when the VRS system is connected to an execution system, is when this can be done really well. So the execution systems have an analytics component, right, which allows you to track your daily cost per mile, your daily on-time deliveries. And as you see a trend graph of what's happening over there, you will realize that, or shippers would realize that their delivery costs are either shooting up or their on-time deliveries are coming down. That's generally the trigger point to go back and look at, hey, do I need to run my long-term planning again to make sure that I can realign, recalibrate, right? So having an analytics component to your execution system is really the canary in the coal mine that is going to tell you that, hey, there is something going on over here that I need to look back. And it may not always mean that I need to look at replanning everything. It may also, it may also reveal that a delivery partner that you may have is just not doing a great job, right? So, but the analytics component of an execution solution, right, will start the investigation process. Will give you some clues that there is something over here that I might need to relook at. So that's typically how it's a data driven world now, and if the more data points you're able to collect, and the more you're able to see it from a broader perspective in an analytics framework, is how you can know when to start looking at recalibrating your deliveries.
It's kind of that little like the flag that waves a little bit and is like, hey, you should look at something over here. And I like that you said it doesn't necessarily always mean that you have to, start back from zero. It just means that, you need to do a little bit of digging here. It could be something as simple as, swapping your provider, or, maybe just renegotiating some rates, or, rebuilding your entire delivery structure.
Right. Most often than not, what happens is it's always incremental, right? Where there's few routes that you might need to recalibrate. It's very rarely that somebody would recalibrate their whole system, because there's also one aspect where some customers are used to getting deliveries from some drivers and they like that. So even if it's costing you a little more, shippers might not change those routes.
That's some of those where, especially if you have a persnickety or like a very particular receiver or shipper, where it might cost you a little bit more, but does it though? Because then you don't have to listen to that receiver or that shipper complain over and over again about drivers or whatever. It's worth the couple extra dollars to just not have to deal with that headache. And I have been in that position before of going, well, I'm sorry, it was the only person that I had available. So it was that or don't get your product. And then you're there for 3 hours listening to somebody complain.
Yeah, and good planning systems actually allow you to do that. They allow you to set what you call as strict constraints for certain customers, and preferred constraints for certain customers. So that these customers, I'm just going to stick with Monday delivery from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. and it is strict. And good VRS systems have those kind of levers where you can make hard constraints and soft constraints to do that planning.
I like that. I like levers as the constraints versus just, how picky are you and the difficult problem kids.
Right.
So when it comes to delivering perishable goods, because something that we've always talked about on the show is, more often than not with perishable goods, it's typically for an experience or a celebration. If you have food or cake or something like that. Or if you have medical supplies, it's typically for someone's health. How do these temperature control technologies and routing system work to kind of keep fresh food safe and, available for human consumption once it arrives?
Right. So, this is going back to what I mentioned earlier, is like a VRS system really has to take into account the permissible time window, right? When something can be delivered. And what gives you the information about the permissible time window are those temperature control systems that are monitoring the condition of the product, as it is transiting, right? So what's important is both the VRS and these temperature control systems are in sync, right? Because the temperature control system doesn't know anything about where the driver is going, right? What route is he going to take? And the routing system doesn't know how much time I have, right? Unless the temperature control and monitoring system can tell you that. So what typically happens is, in a VRS system, you have certain thresholds, right? Which like the ETA, right? Which tells you, okay, I'm 30 minutes away from my delivery, or I'm delayed by 15 minutes. It has to check with the temperature monitoring system. Do I actually have that much time, right? So it's that synchronicity between these two systems is really what makes it possible to deliver, perishable goods on time. And I think what typically VRS systems do is it build in a buffer, right? Because you never know really on the day, whether something is going to go right or not as per plan. So what typically they do is they always build routes with less than 100% fill, right? So that if I need to move a vehicle from one place to the other to service something quickly, I can do that. So that flexibility built into the VRS system, along with setting thresholds, right? To change your plans dynamically, is really how these systems can help with ensuring that perishable goods in the last leg of the journey are executed correctly.
So something that has always kind of been it's fascinating but also kind of terrifying, the amount of food waste and waste that comes just from the amount of supply chain errors, whether it's not being maintained at a certain temperature, or a can of something exploded and now you have a bunch of dirty or damaged things. But there's just a bunch of waste that happens throughout the supply chain. So kind of what are some of the real life examples that you've found of how these vehicle routing systems achieve kind of that cost reduction and that waste reduction within the cold storage side of things?
Right. So I'll give an example of a customer that Newbiz works with, National DCP. They are the delivery co-op that delivers to all the Dunkin' Donuts stores throughout the country, right? So what we do is the deliveries are tracked in real time, and the stores receive ETAs, up to within a 30-minute window of when the driver will show up over there, and that's based on real time tracking. And what the stores do is they plan their labor based on that ETA, so that they can make sure that there's somebody in the back room to unload the semi-frozen stuff, right? When the driver arrives, right? They also know in this alert how much they are going to get. Depending on that, they can decide whether I just need one person to do the put away and storage, or whether I need to have multiple people. So that transition, right, when the stuff is taken out of the truck and it sits in the back room before it makes it to the storage, is really your point at which spoilage can happen, right? So having that information on time, or let's say if there's a delay, that having that information to make sure that, okay, you know what, this driver is going to be 15 minutes late. Let me not move my backroom people to the front to start selling. Let them wait over there so that the stuff can come and I don't have, food waiting in the back room and having a potential of spoilage. So that is one big area, where you can reduce that wait time, or you can, orchestrate the right time when the driver comes and when somebody is available to unload that, where you can minimize the chances of spoilage and the consequent waste that happens.
I feel like that has to be game changing, especially for like staffing levels, because if you know that driver is going to come, I mean, hopefully they're not coming during the morning rush at like 6 a.m., but if you know that they're going to come at like noon, well, then you know that maybe I have one of those 6 a.m.ers stay a little later to help unload that truck, because that way, it's not all on that day shift or that middle shift, the lunchtime rush. It's not all on them to try and keep servicing all the customers and trying putting all the goods away before they potentially spoil. I feel like that has to be absolutely crucial and helpful for staffing problems as well.
Right. And also the promised windows that you give to the stores, right? Like if you know that it's a suburban store, right? Where people are commuting from their homes to to their offices, then they're going to have morning traffic. But if it's a downtown store, you are probably going to have traffic more in the middle of the day. So depending on the store locations, using your strategic planning, you can plan your routes, right, to deliver within specific time windows based on the consumption pattern at those stores. And then on the execution side, you can make sure that it's tracked in real time, so that you don't waste food. So it's sort of like it's a dance, right? It's between long-term planning and short-term execution.
A dance, a crystal ball. It's the same thing. You just kind of have that crystal ball that you look into and you're like, oh, my trucks are going to be here at this time. And it's great. And everyone's going to be here and everyone's going to be happy. And we're going to have almost no spoilage, which is the best part of all. So kind of when it comes to updating your vehicle routing systems and, kind of knowing what's going on, because, new regulations come out all the time. How do you kind of balance like the new regulation changes and then also, implementing them and trying not to throw off everything that you've built in your within that routing system? How do you kind of balance those new regulations versus what you already have existing?
Yeah, see, a lot of the new regulations really are about, traceability, right? Knowing when, where, who, and in what condition the food was delivered, right? Really, if you think about it, that's what the regulations are trying to protect. They're trying to protect the end consumer, and by ensuring that the food is, whatever is delivered is safe. So when it comes to vehicle routing systems, I think at least at NewWiz, what we have done is we have made sure that that we have built our systems that has that down to the lowest level of delivery unit, what time it was picked up, what time it was set into transit, what time it was delivered, who it was delivered to, right, and what condition it was delivered. If you make sure that in your system you are tracking down to that smallest handling unit, right, then any kind of regulation that comes in, you have the data, right, to put rules around it, right? Essentially, it is rules around, that movement that all regulations are trying to enforce, right? So when you're choosing a system, you have to look at what is the lowest level at which that tracking is happening in that system, because that will determine that system's capability to respond to new regulations.
I kind of like that. It's like you can follow your tomatoes the whole way that they go, or you can follow anything. You'll just know exactly where they picked up and where they ended. It's kind of cool, but also pretty fascinating. Okay, so we are running out of time, but there is a question that everyone that comes on the show has to answer. And are you ready for it? It might be the hardest question you get all day.
Sure.
Is cereal considered a soup?
Is cereal considered a soup? It is a soup if it is warm enough.
Okay, so like maybe like are there hot cereals? Like maybe oatmeal? No, that's like a porridge.
Yeah, I'll tell you. I'm not a big fan of cold milk. So what I used to do is I would warm up the milk a little bit before adding to my cereal. So to me, it's kind of semi-soup.
That's interesting. Does it affect the taste of cereal, the warm milk? I've never thought of doing that.
It actually makes it a little mushy, depending on what you're putting in it. So it does become like porridgey somewhat.
I kind of like that though. I might have to try some warm milk and let you know and my cereal and let you know how I like it. But if anyone wants to, get your hot tips on what the milk temperature should be, or if they have any questions about these VRS systems, where can they find you outside the show?
Yeah, so they can reach me at my email, pjagat@newwiz.com, or they can go to the NewWiz website, and info@newwiz.com. They can reach out to us over there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Mary. It was a pleasure being on the show. Thank you.
You can catch other episodes of Running on Ice right here on FreightWaves or anywhere else you get your podcasts like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Need more Running on Ice news? No sweat. Subscribe to the newsletter on freightwaves.com/runningonIce. See you on the internet.